Hello and welcome to the Cultivators Conversations. It's a video series brought to you by Cultivate, where we chat with a variety of people who are members of our Cultivators community about several topics that may be of interest to people like us who want to change the status quo. My name's Jeff. I'll be hosting the conversation. With me today is Molly Shunney and Nick Heath. Welcome to the conversation. Thanks for being our first ever guests. So pressure's on.
Thanks, Jeff.
So this particular one, Cultivators Conversations is going to be several conversations, but we're going to actually launch with a 3-part series about emotional intelligence. It's the source of inspiration comes from a Harvard Business Review article written by Ron Carucci. And the question he posed is your emotional intelligence authentic or self-serving? Which I thought was a really poignant question. So I gave you all a piece of the article to read, and we're going to kind of talk about it. This particular one goes into, I guess, where the boss, the supervisor, there was a project that was running late, and he went in to talk to the PM in an effort to help, and it almost felt it was that question of, are you being an emotionally intelligent boss, or are you feeding your own ego, perhaps? And so I guess the first question I'll ask, either one of you can take it, I guess, is did you see the same things that I saw in that the writer talking about understanding how or why the COO, in this case, might not have realized the end result coming off as self-serving? Or did you think, you know what, I've seen that and I've never thought of it that way?
Molly, if you want to take that first, I'll go after.
All right, I'll take
the
your
questions
volley.
only get harder from here. So
I'll take the first hack at it. Okay, so I read the whole thing back when you shared this originally, Jeff, and really liked it. Felt it was resonant to something I had thought about before. But then when I just read this one segment before we hopped on here, I actually wasn't sure if I fully agreed with it, and I wasn't sure if I was meeting the author, like where he was at when he was talking about the way the COO engaged with the direct report, how it ended up being more cruel than kind, or how it ended up being more selfish than helpful. Because I think there is something to be said for like intention over, what actually is happening. So I felt like his intention was to be helpful. At least from that small snippet of the story, right? Like it's hard to know totally what the whole context of the situation is, but I just had a tough time to put him in that box of like self-serving and thinking of his ego before actually helping this direct report who was clearly emotionally frayed, I think, as they put it,
Right.
and maybe needed that help or rescuing. So that was sort of my initial thought.
Yeah.
Molly,
Go ahead.
I think I would agree on the sense of like, I don't think it's so cut and clear when it comes to emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
in my personal opinion, of like, you're either a hero or you're doing it for your own ego, or however you want to frame it. It was interesting to me how the way I interpreted it as I was reading through this bit of the article, at least, is that the COO was intending, like you said, to help. But in the end, it's like, oh, they're inserting themselves, how it's captured in the article, at least, that they're inserting themselves as the hero that saved the day, made the project return to its timelines. Whereas their intention might have been, well, I want to help, in any way that I can. I also agree with the point, though, that there's a lot of need for, when it comes to emotional intelligence and caring for others, maybe goals or potential, like how do we give them the opportunities to fail, but learn from those failures? And obviously this project might not be the best example because it seems like it was very large and it fell on a lot of people's shoulders. But I think that there's a lot of need to say, like, okay, this person might have said, let's recognize your mistakes, how we can fix those now, how might you look towards the future? But there was a little bit of balance, I think, needed in my perspective in the writing of like, it's not always one way or the other. Maybe it's a little bit of both, and capturing that intention versus the result.
So if we dig a little deeper then, right, so we're going to have to make some assumptions, I guess, about the COO here, right? Because if he went in there and his goal was to put the project back online or on time, then the outcome of the conversation, which we learned at the end of the story, was that he took on some of the responsibility, and the PM actually was relieved of that. But again, we're making this assumption that it was a hero complex versus look, I hear that you're overwhelmed, and how about we take some of the responsibility off your plate? And that, to me, I've always been taught, like, a leader who rolls up their sleeves and gets dirty is a great leader, right? So to me, that sounded more emotionally intelligent.
There's the difference there, I think, in the sense of, to your point, Jeff, sorry, Molly, is that they're ready to roll up their sleeves, but they're not going to take all the credit if it's successful. I think they're ready to take some of the credit if it fails as well. And they're ready to just be part of the team and take part in it, rather than, I'm going to help you get there and then I'll, preach about how successful we were.
Yeah, completely. And I think another point that's important to nail down is the context of how high are the stakes. Like, this project seems like it's high stakes. I mean, to push out a project by a whole year, to give an extra $40K, and to step in as co-leader, that sounds to me like we don't know what the project was, but it sounds like a big project. Right. So it's like, to your point, Nick, you have to make room for people to fail, but like, at what cost and at what stakes? Like, maybe allow your direct reports and your team that you're working with fail when the stakes aren't so high, so that they can learn and hopefully learn for those higher stake projects. Whereas, like, for the higher stakes, I think you, like, regardless of ego or hero or trying to be the good guy in the situation, at that point, it's like a team effort. Like, I don't want to just leave this person out on an island solo and let them take the fall if I can tell that they need help. So yeah, totally, like, it's kind of a mind trip.
Yeah, and it's because all three of the pieces, which, again, if you're watching this in order, I'm talking to the viewer here, you're going to kind of see us almost debate the points that the author makes on each of the stories, that it really can be viewed one way or the other. Context is key, right? And maybe I think how you have that conversation matters as much, if not more, than what comes out of the conversation. So my next question then is, have either of you experienced a leader who has a hero complex versus an emotionally intelligent leader, team player type leader, and what, do you have any anecdotal evidence of what a hero complex might look like in a leader, and how to work within that? And obviously, no one that you work for today. This is clearly in the past.
I'm not even kidding you. I don't think I have a story. I really don't have. I mean, I'm still pretty early on in my career. I worked for a lot of startups, so it's almost like there is not room for that dynamic yet, because we're all hustle and bustle, kind of wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah.
I would say that perhaps, in my role now, I've been experiencing being a people leader for the first time. And I would say I've struggled with that. Like, as a leader, struggled with a hero complex or an ego complex, where maybe I have to check myself in terms of what am I, like, trying to accomplish, and is it self-serving to make myself look a certain way because of the angst that comes with being a people leader for the first time. You're like, I want to show that I can do this and I'm capable. And so I think there are times in my experience that, like, probably if I looked back in retrospect, I would be like, I think I could have emotional intelligence wise handled that a little bit more for the person on the other end. And instead it kind of came off a bit more for me. And so I don't really have an anecdote to point to, nor do I want to necessarily put myself in the hot seat right now, but I definitely think I've experienced that as a people leader.
So, but that shows emotional intelligence right there, because I think that's the key to it, is right, the ability to look inward and start to analyze your own thoughts, your own feelings through a process, and I think that's part of it, right? It's about being genuine whenever you're leading. But at the end of the day, every leader, there is an element to leadership that has to make a decision and direct, right? What about you, Nick? Yeah.
Just to add to Molly's thing, from my personal experience, looking at some projects that I've been on, it's like, sometimes I've been the face, which is not, the best idea for some projects. But I've been the face of the project, where people will say, "Oh my gosh, Nick, great job! Like you did this, you led this." And I've always looked at it as though, well, there were so many other contributors. Like, let's actually pay attention to them. And mind you, like I helped guide some of their actions and helped lead some of what was done. But it's that sense of like, no, let's actually recognize who was part of this. I'm not here to be the savior, the hero, whatever we're going to look at. And on the other end, I've been part of a team, I guess, where I have experienced this. I've had a manager at one point in my career, actually not at the company I'm at now, that was like, oh, let me help you. Let's help you learn the behaviors, the practices here. And then when it came time to presenting the result or completing the project, it was like, I did this and Nick is, on the back. And it's very interesting because it was like, well, wait a second. How do you react to that? How does the individual being thrown to the side capture that? And I think going through that myself has made me think, I'm like, well, who's on the side of every project I've been on? How do I include everybody in the discussion or recognizing that? Obviously, there's some projects that I've seen at my company now that like the list is like 4 slides long of people that contribute to every project. But recognizing some key stakeholders can be really important, not only to show the success of the collaborative network that might be happening, but also thinking about how their egos can be affected or impacted by this final presentation, final result, or final output. Because they might be like, well, I never want to work for that person again, or I might never help that person again. And there's so much emotional intelligence that plays in the balance there. But
I think that in this case of this COO, right, going back to the context that we would need to for us to judge and decide, because that's what we're doing, right, is the outcome of the project, right? When it's all said and done, to your point, Nick, how the COO is going to recognize people, show appreciation, celebrate the contributions that everybody made. If in the postmortem the COO comes in and it's all about, I had to step in and save the day, then bingo, it's self-serving. But if stepping in to save the day, the COO comes into the meeting and still celebrates everybody on the team for what they contributed, and I think that's the emotional intelligent part, to recognize that at the end of the day, everybody wants to know that my contribution was seen, it's appreciated, and I think that's the missing piece of the article. So in 30 seconds, any advice that you would have to give someone who might be working with someone that they feel is kind of in that maybe self-centered? How do you approach that person, because you want the team to be recognized? Not yourself, but the team.
I guess my thoughts there would be understand that your words and actions all have impact, and to think about what that impact might be. The way that I interpreted some of what was captured in this article was that the COO was planting seeds, whether they were well-intended or self-serving, and not necessarily looking at the full outcome play out. We all need to recognize that, are we actually serving others with the questions that we're asking? Are we looking for the needs of others? And understanding that we may have intentions that are not received the way that we think they are. And so that conversation can really solve that, and asking questions, continuing the dialogue, and self-checking yourself, like we've talked about today, can really be key to what you accomplish.
All right.
Yeah.
You go ahead. Final thought, Molly?
I think my final thought is the biggest takeaway from that excerpt, the one sentence I really like, is when expressing empathy for those you lead, pay attention to any need you might need to be the hero. And that's like, it takes away all the other fluff, not that it's fluff, but all the other text. And it just says like kind of what Nick said, check yourself and pay attention to like what might be self-serving and what might help someone more than you, and how you can balance those two things to have a more harmonious relationship with one another.
That's right. Absolutely. And know when you need a hero, right? And ask, hey, I need you to be a hero for me right now. And that's okay too, right? So that's all the time we have for this part 1 of a 3-part series about authentic emotional intelligence, as it's discussed in the article by Ron Carucci. Be sure you watch the next 2. And also, thanks for watching Cultivators Conversations. This is a brand new series that we're going to test some things with. So we are definitely in proof of concept mode. The next two might not even look the same as this one, but we're going to land on a visual presentation that we hope you all like. In the meantime, if you are watching this and you're not a member of the Cultivators community, you can join us if you are a change maker. If you're the type of person who wants to challenge the status quo where you work, go to cultivateall.com/cultivators and you will be welcomed with open arms by people like Nick, Molly, and myself.